Dr. Jazz.
Thanks for finding the time, first of all.
Jazz.
Of course, of course.
You,
Thanks
you
for
know,
having me.
oh man, I listened to the new album, and I have you on so many albums and played with many guys that you play with, and but the new one is just like,
Thank
man,
you.
I just watched today that video that you posted on your channel, and it's like
Oh,
I
yeah.
really like when you end the track, and it's like, yes, we did it.
Yeah, we did it for sure. Yeah.
I want to start with the new one, with Breaking Stretch, actually, and just asking you, start this talk with the writing process. And, it's like really complex compositions that obviously, you've been playing with other musicians as well, but like, how did you compose this music? I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. I think, I've been asked that question a lot, and I still struggle to answer it because there's each song has its own process, and also I think since I was interested in composition, I never really wanted to settle on one way of doing it, and obviously, I started composition lessons since I was in my undergrad, and first it was classical composition, and then, it was more jazz oriented later on in school. But and so you learn all these techniques and so on, but I think I was always curious to find other ways of getting to it, or other ways to kind of get myself out of the default
Yeah.
mode, right? So a lot of all the compositions have a very specific source of inspiration.
Mm.
For example, I'll just for example, MTCB,
Yeah.
Manufacturers Trust Company Building, that one just came to mind right now because that piece was kind of conceived by me looking at that structure. And I don't know if you have read the liner notes, like the
No, no,
Harry.
no. I just listened to
Oh no,
on
okay,
Spotify, unfortunately. I mean,
no
or
worries.
fortunately, actually. So.
Well, I got to send you. I will be in this for later, but I definitely would love to give you a physical copy. But anyway, so you don't know the background, so I'll tell the full story.
Oh,
But
please.
basically, the producer of the record took me to this place here in Manhattan, which is now a North Face store. So I remember like we were walking in there, and it's just like, what are we doing here? And it turned out that this used to be the old Manufacturer Trust Company building, which used to be a bank later on, and it has a huge Harry Bertoia sculpture.
Mm.
It's like a giant metal wall that is super intricate, has all this different metallic plates and connections and of different thin sizes and thicknesses and so on. So I remember looking at this wall and immediately hearing sound and being eager to transfer that somehow into a musical composition. So it's a very natural way of getting inspired, to compose either by artwork or whatever. But then, this is where the process begins. So, the choices that I made compositionally, for example, from the intervallic material,
Yeah.
I was conscious to use wide intervals. So that piece starts with a lot of really large leaps and very pointillist as well in the writing for the horns and myself, but also there's a lot of density happening in this
Yeah.
piece because when you really look at this wall, it makes a lot of sense why the piece was written that way. And I wanted to reflect that huge density and almost chaos, control chaos that I saw in this art form and do that with my music. So it wasn't necessarily that I was motivated, like I'm going to use this form or I'm going to use this harmonic progression or so on, even though there is harmony embedded in it.
Sure.
It was more for example, from an intervallic approach and trying to find intervals that will reflect not only the distance or the angular shapes of the artwork, but also by creating large leaps, I give the illusion of depth, and resonance, and that's where sometimes, which was one of the common themes for the record, trying to make the septet sound bigger than it actually is, because even though seven people, it's just three horns, And that's, you know, it could be powerful, but not as powerful as a big band or
Sure.
things like that. So I
Yeah.
had sort of the big band sound in mind, and I wanted them to sound like a 19 horn piece, even though there are only three. So my writing was a lot influenced by that as well. So how to use resonance to kind of create that illusion in the listener, density to create also
Yeah.
that illusion, like this piece sounds like it's being played by 20 people, but it's just 7 people, and so on. So anyway, so that's one example.
Interesting.
There's another one, the one in the video,
Yeah.
Palo de Oros. That one, I think maybe you've heard in interviews before or not,
Yeah,
but
I didn't want to spoil it for myself actually. So
okay. So mathematics are, you know, kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say a passion, but they've always been part of my life, whether I liked it or not. My parents are both computer engineers,
oh, really?
programmers,
Okay.
and
Okay.
so I mean, since I was a kid, they will kind of push it on me, even though if I didn't want to do it, you know. And so I found that's another way to approach composition from a different angle rather than just a traditional, again, the default. So finding another way to get out of the default approach. So I use the shape of a pentagram, which
Hmm.
that's sort of what the name of the piece stands for. Palo de Oros is a suit of Spanish cards, like poker cards, you know. And so it's gold coins, and the gold coins actually represent pentacles, you know.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with all the esoteric, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It's just more literally what it used to be, just the gold coin. It was a pentacle. So the shape of the pentacle, you know, the number 5 and the number 10, you know, the 10 lines connecting the 5 points and that star. So I use that, I guess, that number as a base for this composition. So the number 5 and 10. So for example, the time signature is in 10/16. And the first thing that I wrote was actually what I call the clave, you know,
Yeah.
and the or the rhythmic clave. So the rhythmic clave is based on micro, you know, subdivisions of 5 and 10 as well, but also you can feel it in a big pulse of 5. So again, you know, the using numbers to translate into rhythm, and you know, sometimes I tell my students, like, it's not just doing it on paper, because sometimes what I would do is like literally translate, okay, number 3 could be a dotted 8 note, could be a triplet, could
Exactly.
be,
Yeah.
you know, a dotted quarter note, anything like that that could represent number 3 in a rhythmic translation. But then you really have to think about, well, the clave still has to make sense, you know. So I really think about sort of that tension and release aspect in rhythm, right? If I have a lot of tension in the rhythmic pattern, it's not gonna feel good, you know, or a lot of resolution is
Yeah.
not gonna feel very, you know, stumpy or whatever, you know. So I really want to make sure that even though I'm coming from a more, I guess, intellectual place, ultimately I still want to make sure that it feels good, most of
Yeah.
all, you know, especially with the rhythmic structure, and that it sounds good. So that's kind of like in a nutshell the whole process, you know. So
Interesting.
sometimes
Yeah.
I just, you know, have a whole notebook with translations, and then I try to put it together, but then still, okay, does this groove, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No.
if it doesn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, if it doesn't groove, then it's not good enough, you know. So then I have to, you know, restart again and come up with a different combination, you know. So anyway, so that was one of the layers, and then I just started thinking about, well, you know, let me think about like counterpoint, but in rhythm. You know, a lot of my compositions kind of start with the
Yeah.
rhythmic structure, and then the pitch content comes later. Not all of them, but most of the time, that's kind of a way that I go about it. And the other layers in that piece are basically counter rhythms
Yeah.
to that initial clave. So and then even in that piece, there's a moment where the vibe solo happens. It goes to just 4/4, and there's kind of more reasoning to it behind it, like the feel kind of amplifies for a second.
Yeah.
So I think in a more technical term, I think I use the dotted 8 note as the constant throughout, and the 10/16 and the 4/4, you know. But then the whole reason for that is, you know, if again tension and release within
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
bigger
Of course.
picture, if I stay on that 10/16 and that clave over and over, by the minute 7, people are gonna be like, oh my God, okay,
Yeah.
you know, I think I got it. So it's a moment of just of a break for the listener, but also this in a more, I guess, I guess, esoteric way, the connection to the inspiration. That same suit of cards in tarot represents my zodiac sign, which is Virgo. and
Okay.
that is attached to the to the earth
Interesting.
element and so on, which is very grounded, so therefore, okay, 4/4 vibe solo, kind of making that connection, a little bit. So anyway, just again, this
Quite
was
cool.
completely
Yeah.
different process than the manufacturer's trust company. So I could go on about every single track
Every
in the
tune, yeah,
record,
no, I got you. Yeah,
but
interesting.
you get the idea,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Did you know you're writing for, when I listen to the music, it's kind of like you've written for the players. Maybe I'm wrong, but like, you use the strength of Mark,
Hmm.
who's really good at like this angular playing, or Adam or whoever. Like, did you know this is the band and you're writing for these guys, or?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think, maybe I mean, I may not have this luxury all the time, but I always want to, when I put my quartet together, for example, it was I chose the people. It wasn't like, okay, I just want drums, or I just want, when I put this band together, oh, I just want a saxophonist,
yeah,
I was writing for them specifically, and there's a reason. There's a lot of things in there that I know it would be impossible. Like 5 songs, that melody is so fast and so leapy and so hard, and I was like, there's no way, you know I don't think any saxophonist would be able to play it. And I was thinking in Johnny Ravigon, I was thinking in Mark Chip. I heard them play things like that
yeah,
before,
yeah,
so I knew that we're gonna be able to do it. So the whole, the big picture of the record is Breaking Stretch is kind of pushing everybody to their limits, in a sense, with the writing, and also, with the just in general, just the whole record, my writing, my compositional process, but also their abilities, their technical abilities on their instrument and so on. Also the range of the ensemble, Breaking Stretch.
mhm,
I use a lot of extreme ranges, which is the reason also why I use sopranino. And again, John Ravigon is really good
yeah,
at
yeah,
all of those different saxophones, because sometimes you don't really have that. You have multi-reeds that are a little bit better than on one instrument than another, and so on. So there were a lot of reasons why I chose the people that are on the record, and I especially wrote for them, or
yeah,
thinking of them. Like the bass, there's some lines that are actually written, and I just don't know. I mean, I know there's plenty of inspiration in the world, but the ones that I know of, I don't think there's any that could do it the way Kim
yeah.
does.
He's a monster.
So yeah, I was definitely, they were in my mind from the very first note that I was writing. So yeah.
That's so important. Yeah.
Hmm.
I love also how when I listen to Marcus, it sounds so effortless. And it's
Oh yeah.
not, and he's just like on that video also. He's like playing the craziest shit over that pattern, and it's like, man,
Yeah.
come
I
on.
mean, that's another thing too. Like when I met Marcus in VJ Ayer's band, like which not many people know this, because there was never a record for this. It was a big band that
Really?
VJ Ayer put together in I think it's the first time we played was 2013.
Wow, really?
And it
Wow.
was, yeah, and I mean,
Wow.
BJ was one of my composition teachers in my master's, so he's his influence was, he's I love his music since before I even met him, so, but I knew that kind of that Marcus was already, I guess, familiar with those kind of complex, and even then in 2013, like he would like just look at it for 10 seconds. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I got it. you know but anyway, so since then I remember I being like, I want to do something with Marcus, because I feel like he would be really good for my music,
Yeah.
not only because he's such a great drummer, but I think, like I was saying with John Ravigan and them, like, is somebody that would really understand the music from a deeper level and will be able to bring it alive, and so yeah, so since then I've been thinking about him, with his music.
Yeah.
So with this, actually, I do write drum beats in all my music. Like all the
Really?
charts have, yeah. And
Wow.
I'm a drummer. Before playing vibes, I was a percussionist. I played drums before, and I'm always one of my biggest pet peeves has always been like when I go to a session and they always tell the drummer, oh yeah, just play 16 notes on that song, and it's just like there's all these crazy hits on it, and it's just like, are you serious? It just, or they give him the flute chart or whatever, and I always think, because my music is based on such a strong rhythmic structure, it's imperative that I write some kind of, I call it a drum skeleton beat. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a bass and snare and a hi-hat. And then, I even make sure that this is just a suggestion, but, for Marcus, it's more like if he was like a like a specific, or any drummer that plays in my band, so it's like a clave that they can follow, you know, and then they can kind of build from there on, because that's the structure of the piece, rather than being like, oh yeah, this is in 10/16, so just play 16 notes throughout the whole thing, you know, and it's not the same, you know, it doesn't match what the composition is about, you know. So he does a really amazing job, you know, doing his thing with the drum bass. And again, that connects. I remember working with VJ, you know, a lot of his music has also some kind of drum structure written in, you know. Steve Coleman, and I remember I used to listen to a lot of his music before, and then you see some of his charts online, you know, they also have some kind of
it's written
drum,
on,
you know. So and it's not just like, oh, I gotta write for drums, but it's just like it highlights the rhythmic skeleton and structure of the piece, so therefore the drummer can actually support and enhance what's going on in the composition, rather than just, you know, sort of guessing where the hits are and so
exactly.
on, you know. So I don't know, I just, that's something that, you know, I still tell my students, like, write something for the drummer, you know, because especially when it's original music, you know, it's like they need to, is there just another member in the band that needs to sheet music and needs to understand what's going on, you know. So yeah, so anyway, so yeah,
Interesting.
on top
Yeah.
of that, Marcus does a lot of great, that's amazingly, you know, just translating what's there into then actually, you know, creating, shaping the
A
piece,
wider
you know,
picture and
in
the
exactly.
dramaturgy and everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, fantastic. You mentioned VJ, and I wanted to ask you. I wanted to go a little bit back, like with you, because uh, how did you enter this music? Jazz and improvisation. I mean,
Yeah.
stupid question, but did you have like a specific moment that you heard like an album or someone like that you said like, shit, I really want to investigate it, or
Yeah, I mean, it's a there's, I guess it's a complicated answer, and there's a less complicated answer. But you know, I think I was a classical percussionist, and then, you know, I used to play a lot of contemporary music, even in my undergrad, and a lot of that music at some point, especially, you know, more modern composers,
yeah.
incorporate a lot of sonic improvisation in their works. So I was always attracted to that aspect of improvisation. And then, and even looking back at the culture that I grew up in Mexico, there's a lot of Afro-Cuban music there, and I used to play in some of the bands down there where,
Yeah.
like, improvisation is part of what you do, you know. So I was always attracted to improvising, not necessarily jazz, you know, but it was just, okay, now it's time to take a solo, you know, on whatever instrument you're playing in that moment. So anyway, I guess just I started to check out um albums. I think it was probably like people like Ralph Alessi, you know, Tim
Okay.
Byrne, BJ actually was one of the people that, and this is just like a friend of mine just started to kind of give me records from them, because, you know, I liked improvisation, and I was already kind of starting to play jazz vibraphone, you know. And I think, you know, one of the first shows that I saw, like live jazz shows, and because, you know, when I lived in Mexico back then, there was nothing, you know, there was no jazz, wasn't even a thing. Now it's a whole, it has blown up, you know, but back then there was no programs in jazz, no concert that you could go particularly see of high level. So when I moved to the States and I was living in Philly, Wayne Short's Quintet came, and my friend was like, you got to go see this, you know. And this is like, I had no clue, you know, at the time, of what's going on. But what resonated with me, and this is something that has resonated with me since I was a kid watching Cuban samba and so on, it's just the energy manipulation of the band, the communication within the band, and ultimately the freedom that they each had as a performer within the music. And I remember being like, that's exactly what I've been looking for, you know, just like that. I remember watching Brian Blade play drums in that concert, and it just like, wow, you know, it's just like the freedom of expression that he had,
Yeah.
and obviously everybody else in that band. So that was a thing, one of the first catalysts of like searching for that feeling, you know, of like complete freedom as an improviser, and then really just letting your instinctual compass guide you, you know. And so, you know, that alternately was studying jazz vibraphones, and I remember, like, you know, it wasn't really matching what I saw in the concert. So I just started to kind of look for musicians or music within the jazz world I would think will incite that in me. So that's where my friend was like, well, check out this record, you know. And so I remember he like gave me this like a whole booklet of CDs that used to be his, and he was like, VJ was one of them, Ralph Lessie's This Against That
Yeah.
band. And then that led me into going to Ralph's program, and I don't know, you're familiar with School for Improvisational Music here in New York.
In
And
Brooklyn, right? Yeah,
yeah, in
yeah.
Brooklyn. Well, yeah, back then, now I think they do it in different places, but yeah, mostly in Brooklyn. And so that's when I really got hooked into this world, So that's where I met Steve Coleman, I saw Villar, Tyshawn, all these people were there, Andy Milne,
Yeah.
so when I moved to New York, I wanted to make sure that I was around people like that. On the other hand,
Mm.
when I graduated my undergrad, there was this venue in Philly that used to do these residencies with New York artists. The venue is called A Painted Bride. And at that time, they invited John Hollenbeck to do a workshop or but the way it
That's how you
worked is
hooked up
like,
with John. Okay.
exactly, yeah. So the way it work is like they will ask you to audition for it, and they will pick 12 musicians to work with John, and he will do a concert, and we'll work with him for like, I think it was 2 weeks or 1 week, I can't
Oh, wow,
remember.
beautiful.
And so anyway, so I ended up getting picked, and Matt Mitchell was one of the other musicians because at the time he lived in Philly too, and so that's how I met Matt and
Okay.
John, And so when I moved to New York, John kind of found out that I moved to New York, and he's like, "Hey, you want to play in the big band?" So I was like,
Okay.
"Sure." So so then from there you start to meet more people. I mean, John was a huge influence for me because, I
Oh
mean,
man, yeah.
I played with him since 2008 until, I mean, we just did a record last December with the Hamburg Big Band with the NDR, so it's like he's writing, his
Yeah.
presence,
He's
he's the
fantastic. Yeah.
way he work ethic, everything is just, and just being literally behind the drums when I would play with a big band, and it was incredibly inspiring, and a lot of my writing in the septet, I feel that in a sense has a little,
Yeah.
one of those drops, that kind of is mixing there somehow, and so yeah, so that's kind of, what got me into this. But ultimately, I don't think about it like, oh, I want to play jazz or I want to play this type of jazz or whatever. It's just more, it connected me with that feeling of complete freedom of expression as an improviser, which, I try to sometimes bring to other contexts that are maybe not necessarily from this music, or maybe more in or whatever.
Yeah.
But I try to kind of, bring that same approach to that space as well. So yeah.
Interesting. So it was fairly easy in a way for you when you moved to New York because you had
Mhm.
already these connections, right, with Matt and John and
Yeah. So I was doing my master's here. That's yeah, the first year basically was when John asked me to play with
already.
the big
Wow.
band a
Okay.
little bit, but it's still hard,
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I know.
It's just like, and but it was, in a sense, like I got to meet more. I remember I did sim again because in between the 2 years of my master, and I met Mike Formanek there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was also another great connection to make, and then during my master's, I went to NYU, and particularly because at the time, Andy Milne was teaching there, Villar was teaching there, Ralph was teaching there. So I was like, okay, I want to study with those guys. And I was also studying with Stefan Harris, privately before, and then he was only teaching at NYU. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna go. He's there
Okay.
too. So it was kind of a conscious choice. So I got to work with Andy a little more, got to work with VJ, which later on, it led for me to play with him a little bit more, and so it's one of those decisions that sometimes, you kind of make, and you put yourself in the right time, the right place,
Yeah.
and then some things happen, but some things don't happen. So,
Oh yeah. Sure. Sure. Yeah.
and also I remember the first time, I mean, like even though I was playing with Hollenbeck, like I still needed to find a job and things like that because it's not enough money to pay rent in
Of
New
course.
York
Yeah.
City.
Playing John's
you
large
know
ensemble doesn't pay the bills or
Exactly.
everything.
so so I mean, I'm saying this because sometimes, especially my students now, I think there's still that idea that it's like, oh, you get this big gig and that's it. You still have to figure something out, and
Of
and
course.
and
Yeah.
especially if you live in New York, it's very complicated, and things take time, so, which is another thing too, like, because I worked with those guys earlier on in my career, it kind of influenced my decision of releasing records of my own earlier then, because I think all of them were so unique. Like from their first record on, you can immediately tell, oh my God, like this is a very unique voice, and nobody sounds like this person. So in a sense, I set up this incredibly high standard for myself to in order to release a record for the first time. And when I finally did, it's not that I felt that I was ready. I just felt like I needed to do it now, otherwise it's never going to happen, but I do appreciate that because it really pushed me to like continue to explore and who is it that I am as a musician? What am I looking for? My writing, continue to develop it rather than just like writing 5 tunes in college and record it and hire the most famous people, which is again everybody does their thing, but I think for me, because I saw those guys, I was like, they set an example that I wanted to follow in a sense, so yeah.
What was it easy for you to becoming a band leader? I mean, and leading bands in, explaining to guys how to do it, or like, was it natural?
I think it's, I wouldn't say it was easy, but because I've seen it for so long, it's almost like there were some pointers that I knew I could take, and also because of the people that I chose to play with, a lot of them I work with them in so many situations that it was easy for me to communicate with them, so there's some kind of sense of like, I don't really know this person and what am I going to tell them, so I think it was easy in that sense, but it's still, the harder part is you never, even though you have all the pieces, have the compositions, everybody's ready, there's still things that happen here and there, like little fires that come up here, and then you have to make sure that you're ready to deal with it. Actually, funny story, in the recording session of the Breaking Stretch, the first day of recording, talking about literal fires, we had just finished a take, thank God, and then the fire alarm went off.
Oh, shit.
And just like, and that's one of those moments of band leader, like I'm just trying to make sure that everybody's cool, that nobody loses, their patience or whatever, and so that's what I'm saying. Those elements still make it hard, to kind of deal with those unexpected situations. But yeah, so I've enjoyed, though. I think it's fun. Yeah.
It's a nice thing. Yeah. Then you bring the beast to the road, and then it's like a completely different story, always like having 5 people, or like, okay, is everyone happy? No, he likes to have dinner late, like early. Oh man, I remember that.
I think it matters, and the other thing too is like I really make sure that I want to treat them how I would like to be treated,
Exactly,
and I think there's a certain aspect of, even though they're your friends, still being professional is important, I mean, even something as simple as like making sure they get paid on time, making sure that, okay, you need a taxi, don't worry about it, like, and and maybe I may only be able to afford certain amount of gigs if I keep doing that, but I prefer to do that than crossing sometimes some gray areas where like, oh yeah, you're my friend, and then we enter into some weird situations, so I think that's just me, and that's the way I want to do it, everybody's different, but so far it's been great, and working with those guys has been amazing. So
do you have plans for bringing the band to Europe, or is something being planned, or
I'm
it's hard,
working
right,
on
to have
it.
people? Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
It's tricky, I would love to, first of all, and I've been working not only to try to bring it over there, but try to bring it here in the US,
States,
and other places. So I guess it's to be determined. So, but if something solidifies, I'll definitely let you know. But yeah.
I wanted to ask you also about your story with Mary Halvorson. I mean, you've been a part of her project for quite a long time now. How did that begin, and what does it mean for you? I mean, she's, one of the most established composers and guitarists in the jazz world now. And
Yeah, so Mary and I met in Michael Forman's big band.
oh yeah, in the
And
Colossus ensemble. Yeah, of course.
exactly. So I mean, that was also 2013 when we did our first gig. And then, I mean, we kind of reconnected, or I guess got a little bit closer, maybe just a few years after that. But we played like another gig with the Colossus in 2016. Like there were little things like that. So there was a certain continuation there. And so I think the first thing actually that happened is like she asked me to work together with her at this college here in New York. So I was like, oh sure, that'd be great. And she's such an inspiring musician, and like you mentioned, she's established herself for years now, and so anyway, so then one thing led to another, where like she put this group together, and I was happy to join, so but yeah, so it's kind of one of those connections again that happened years ago, and then you keep seeing each other, and then seeing what each other is doing, and so on, so it kind of worked out. And it seems to me that this band, she was really trying to put a very specific, it was like kind of like what I was thinking with the septet, like not that she needs trumpet or trombone or vibes. I think she was looking for a specific voice
Yeah.
in each instrument, and therefore I think she ended up asking the people that she did, so we're now, I think we're even planning, I think, a tour now in 2026. It's just like
Oh, wow.
it keeps happening, with that band, which is really cool, and we just recorded, I think, the third record this past summer.
Oh, really? Beautiful. Fantastic.
Yeah, so there's more to come with that group, so it's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You've been so active. I mean, I also watched today on YouTube. You're on the new album by Miles Okazaki. And
Yeah, Miles,
I
yeah.
mean,
I love Miles.
how did you cope through that music? I just checked that one clip. I mean, I know Miles. We've talked and we've been friends also, and this is some of the most complex stuff out there. Like, how did you end up on that one and dealing with that music? How does that?
Well, Miles, again, now I met Miles through Matt Mitchell,
Yeah,
and
okay. Well,
and we were both in that band, Phalanx
yeah.
Ambassadors, and so we went through. I always feel like we went through a lot together just by being in that band.
Yeah, that's
Because
Maddie's even crazier, man.
that music originally was called Stretch Goals, which, I think he really talk about trying to push people to the limit. He was really trying to push all of us to the insanity limit. Because that first time we saw that music, or we started to play the music, was 2016, I think, and we finally recorded, I think, 2018 or
Mm,
19.
yeah.
I may be wrong in the year, I can't remember. But it was at least a couple of years that we worked on that music, and we worked on it. Like, we will get together here at my place and like 4 or 5 hours, and
Wow.
just kind of from the willingness of just really all of us were up to the challenge, and because it's very unusual to do that in New York and like
Yeah.
just have multiple meetings of multiple hours, and then just being willing to do it. But I think that there's no other way that music would come alive if we didn't do that. So Miles was part of that process. So I really feel that I got to know him really well, musically, and also, he's such an awesome composer and
Yeah.
guitar player, and I mean, for me, his music, I used to listen to his music before I even met him, and so working with him for the first time was, one of those situations where you're like, oh my God, I'm finally working with this person,
Cool.
and so anyway, so we met, we know each other since, and he also, we played together in Dan Wise's quartet too, which is also similar type of, challenging music.
Yeah.
So I think with Miles, because I was so used to his process or his approach and the people that, excuse me, that we both played together. I mean, it's still challenging to play music like that, but I love it, and I'm up for the challenge, and then it's when you listen to the final result, it's amazing, so yeah, but that record's interesting because there were some compositions, but also we did a lot of different things where we kind of improvise based on certain limitations that he was giving us. And then there was one track where he kind of transcribed everybody's things, and then he kind of put this, I think the video that you
Yeah, I saw
see,
that. Yeah,
that,
yeah,
yeah, so he kind of strung along the different excerpts that people were improvising. I mean, that's crazy. I mean,
yeah.
it's
Yeah, it's
how he did that, and the result is, I think is amazing. But yeah, that was such a blast, and I was so happy to be part of it. He's actually now, I'm working I'm writing music for a new project that I'm premiering in December, and he's in it. It's a nonet, so it's a quintet plus string for quartet,
oh,
string quartet. So it's John Hollenbeck, Kim Cass, and Miles and Sylvie Courvoisier,
no.
who I've been working with recently, and myself.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I,
then the string quartet, yeah.
you have a duo with Sylvie also, right? I read coming
Correct,
out.
yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. We recorded that in the summer or early summer, and then we're hoping to release it next year sometime. So
Fantastic.
we're working on trying to, take that next step right now. So
It's just duo, like piano and
yep.
vibes.
Piano
Wow,
and
fantastic.
vibraphone, no electronics this time. It's just pure vibraphone and marimba. I use marimba in the
Fantastic.
recording. And I mean, Sylvie's another person that, back in the day I listened to, and it really changed, a lot of the things of how, not so much change, but really kind of gave me the license to do the things that I do now, because I was like, oh, people actually do that. It's not just percussion music. You know,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can actually bring that into the improvisation world and also into the vibraphone world, because the vibraphone world is a whole other universe, you know, where sometimes it's one-dimensional, you know, particularly on just if you just focus on just one specific lineage, you know, then it's a little bit kind of, limited, you know. So Sylvie kind of gave me the license to do things by listening to her that maybe no other vibraphonist was doing, other than maybe Walt Dickerson
Mm, yeah.
or I can't think of anybody else, you know. So anyway, so finally working with her, you know, which again is kind of how New York works. You know, I met her in a project, they Douglas project, and then
Oh,
I was like,
really?
you know,
Oh,
I've Sylvie Courvoisier, I finally get to work with her. So then after that, you know, just one thing led to another. So I'm so happy that we have this duo now. So yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Otherwise, what are your plans for coming to touring wise? I mean, are you coming to Europe with someone or recording? What are the upcoming months or weeks
Yeah,
scheduling for you?
I'm actually going with I'm going there with Sylvie.
Oh, really?
I'm
Oh,
going so I'm trying to see where we're going. I just saw it here on we're going with her quartet first. She put together a quartet, I think it was maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. So it's called Poppy Seeds,
hmm.
and it's her, myself, Dan Weiss, and Thomas Morgan.
Ooh, okay.
We it's a great band. We just had a gig a few days ago, and I mean it's the first time we played. It was so fun, and but now she actually, you know, she wrote new music for it, and I think the plan in the future is to record this band, but I think she wants to do the tour, so you know, so we get to play more and kind of like get the material a little bit more, you know, settled, you know, and so I'm
Beautiful.
really excited for that. I think we're starting in Berlin. On what you're in Germany, right?
I'm in Slovenia. I'm like,
Are you based in Germany?
no, I'm in Slovenia. Like,
Oh, Slovenia. I thought you were in Germany.
no,
Okay.
no. But I'll check on
All
her
right. So
schedule
that's what I was
actually.
gonna say. If you're in
Yeah.
Germany, then you can come see us play.
In Berlin, it's
Yeah,
like
it's
nine
somewhere on
hours
my
by car,
website.
but
I
okay.
can't remember the dates.
Nice.
But
Uh,
anyway, so yeah, so I'm going there with her, and actually we're ending the tour with a duo. So we're doing at the end of the tour, and so that's the next thing in Europe. But no Slovenia, unfortunately.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's only Switzerland and France. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Next time, maybe in Austria, I'll catch you or something. So, but beautiful. Oh shit, the connection. No, are we alive?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
yeah.
alive. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think it's on my side. But cool.
Oh, can you, yeah,
Yeah,
can you hear me? Okay,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But cool, Patricia. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll let you go. Have a nice Sunday afternoon. But thanks for sharing some of these thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Of
And I hope to catch you in Europe soon. So
course, my pleasure. If I'm, where I am in the near future.
yeah,
So
drop me a line if you're
yeah,
gonna be close to Slovenia or something, so we can meet for a drink
for
or
sure.
something. Cool. Thanks so much. I'll let you know when this is
For
out. I'll send you
sure.
a link and
Yeah,
everything.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
You too.